Hey folks, I'm Luke from Covalence. Welcome back to my TypeScript tips series. Today I'm going to be demystifying another TypeScript feature, Type Aliases. So in this video I'm going to cover what they are, how they're used, and how they can streamline your TypeScript code. So whether you're new to TypeScript or looking just to deepen your understanding of something you already have been writing for a while, this video hopefully has you covered. Before we dive on in, I want to tell you all about our Covalence community membership. For $25 a month, you can gain access to an amazing suite of benefits tailored to accelerate your coding journey. You're going to get assistance from my team, as in myself and my coworkers, right in our Discord channel. You're going to get events aimed at improving your coding skills, help with all of our labs in our course, and additional content if you're interested, interview preparation, resume building, and things like that. And you're going to get access to our comprehensive front end, back end, and my standalone React course. So if you're interested, check the description down below. Otherwise, let's continue on into this video. So introduction to type aliases, right? They are essentially a way you can give a name to a TypeScript type. Just like variable aliases where you assign a certain name to a certain value, in TypeScript you can assign a name to a certain type. It can be incredibly useful for making your code more readable and maintainable, a common theme you see a lot in TypeScript videos. So the type alias syntax is very straightforward. You basically use the type keyword followed by the name you want to give the type with an equal sign. So it could be as simple as type username equals string. So remember, I have this code sandbox linked in the description down below. You can make your own TS sandbox or do whatever you want. That's fine. Let's just go ahead and dive on in to not waste too much time. We're going to have a type, let's say username is of type string. This is using a primitive type right here. So just because you have primitive types available in TypeScript doesn't mean you just have to explicitly use them on your variables. You can assign a type variable name, in our case username, with a primitive type of string. So this is like a assignment of a variable for TypeScript purposes, right? It has no output on our production code. It's only a development time check during compiling, right? So we could use number, string, boolean, all those primitive types. This is where they come in handy, right? That way we give a more robust name to a string type that we can use across our code base to help people figure out what we're trying to do. So we can have age number. We can also have type like, I don't know, is employee. And if I can type, get it, boolean like that right there. We have our three various types and we can assign them to variables. So if I have a variable called username, I can assign the username type. Put in Percy as our name for today, and voila, I have username as a string type that uses the username type that I assign. Again, it gives us a more robust way to reference certain types across our code base, right? So we can have that, and again, like this is this is all primitive, so it shouldn't be too difficult to see what I'm trying to do here. It just helps me give more meaningful names, just like a variable would. And boom. It gives me just a more meaningful way of giving types to variables across a code base that has a specific theme. It makes it more maintainable, rather than just putting string, number, and boolean directly inside of those. You'll see me use this a lot of the times in my TypeScript videos where any kind of builder walkthrough that I use, right? It's again, improves readability, understandability, and it reduces potential errors as it enforces a certain level of semantic correctness to our code, right? This type username is more specific than just a type string we can throw across our code base. Types are also useful, and this is actually going to be a link in the description down below. Watch my interfaces video from the previous video in this TypeScript tips series, as there's going to be some overlap by this point moving forward, and I'll cover that in another video as well about comparisons, differences, and uses of interfaces versus type aliases for object types, which is what we're going to do right here as well. So they aren't just for primitives like I have, they can be all for entire objects, right? That way we can define a type alias for an object type. We can avoid repeating that same object structure in multiple places across our code, just like we learned with interfaces. So the syntax to create one is quite simple. We can make a type of user that's going to combine what we kind of learned just a moment ago. We can say name string, age number, and then maybe email string in this case or something like that. That's a type of user. So unlike the interface, this is an assigned object type to this variable for TypeScript to use. So I can now make a const Percy is of type user. And we're going to assign the Percy variable values of name, Percival de Rolo, his age from the show, I don't know, early 20s, I think. We'll put 24. And then email, his email would be something like Percy at voxmachina.com or something like that. But there you go. Like, we have a simple user type alias that is an object with type properties, name, age, and email, string, number, string. And we're going to use this user type alias to type the Percy object, right? It's important to note that you can also have optional properties in these, just like you learn in interfaces and things like that. So there are a lot of this overlap in these rules here, which is, again, something I'll cover in a separate video. But again, there's a lot of benefits to doing this as well, rather than just having a general object type assigned like in various places. Again, for reusability, readability, maintainability, all the fun stuff I've been harping on in this TypeScript tips series all applies here as well. It's a very quick and easy way to make a specific object structure to use consistently across our code base. Imagine coding a game that has like a type NPC or PC and things like that have certain properties for your video game. Very useful for TypeScript to know what that structure looks like so you can reuse it across your code base while coding your theoretical game in TypeScript. Right? Something that's interesting about type aliases as well, so this is something cool you can do with them, where I can say, let's see, string or number is going to be assigned a string union with number type here. So we have two possible types for this type alias, right? So we can say let value, who will be a string or number type, just be declared but not initialized. And we're going to initialize it with a value or assign a value of hello, which is going to be okay in our book because hello in this case is a string value and that's totally fine. If I assign it the value 42, they'll answer the life, universe, and everything, then that's also fine because that is a union with number or string. That's totally fine to assign value either of those. But if I assign the value of the Boolean true, we do get our TS error like I was expecting, which says Boolean is not assignable to the type of string or number. So in this example, the alias is a union of string and number. As we can see up above there, it means it can be either a string or a number, but not any other type. Type aliases for union types help make our code more descriptor and easier to read. Again, this is a common theme I find myself repeating on a lot of these examples, in that now we only need to update our alias type and not like the specific variable usage down elsewhere in our code. Again, I'm a huge proponent and fan of the single source of truth. This type might be the single source of truth for several variables across our code base, and rather than having to go to each variable and change like a specifically assigned type, we can come to this one single source of truth, string or number, and union an additional type should something have to change, right? So it's very flexible, and it can include primitives, objects, intersection types, and even other union types. There's a whole lot of cool stuff you could do. So something else that is a possibility for types as well, just like you saw in interfaces, is they can represent functions. So type aliases for function types. Classic greeting function is going to take a name argument, who will be a string value, and it should return a string value as well. So they can use be-defined function types, particularly useful when you enforce a specific function signature across multiple parts of our code base. So that's the syntax to making it. We just assign it an arrow function, just like we're already used to doing. And then from there, we can say hello, and we can say this is going to be a greeting function type, who will take a name down yonder. If I can learn to type here, get it? Again, pun intended. Where I can say it's going to return a hello and the interpolated name argument. So unlike in previous type assertion or type videos where I had to write name string, it understands what that is because I wrote its signature up top here in this type, and I don't have to write name : string and things like that. So that's a very handy thing if you might have like complex function arguments or things like that that might be reused. Assigning it to a type alias is much better than having to write it in line as well. So that's something you could take into consideration, meaning I could also share it across this one, which might say goodbye, which will also be a greeting function that will take a name argument and return a string value of return goodbye name, goodbye name, and interpolate that there as well. They share this signature, and because of that, we can now use one type for both these function signatures, which is an important thing to know how to do. Right? Benefit is that you can help ensure consistency across our code base, like a very common theme here. I'm going to stop saying that. Additionally, it can make it more descriptive and easier to read. Again, so instead of saying name : string, and then the function return type as string as well, that's all handled by my type alias up here. So they can include any number of parameters, and the type parameters can be valid, any valid TypeScript type, optionals, all that crazy stuff. This gives us, again, a quick and easy way to type a function's multiple potential arguments and return types and all that crazy stuff we could do up here as a type alias rather than having to write it inline inside of all your functions. Something I see my students do a lot. So any students of mine from our full stack course that I've learned TypeScript, pay attention to this. Take note of this, right? It's important to know how to do. And the last thing I want to cover in this video to make sure it's not like 30 minutes long is type aliases and generics. So we can have container of type T will be an object of value that will have a type of T as well. So they can be incorporated with generics, which is a really cool thing to know how to do, allowing you to create flexible and reusable types that can work with multiple data types now, right? So when defining a type alias with a generic, we include a type variable in the definition. The type variable can be used with the alias definition, and its actual type will be determined when the alias is used. So think of this like as a TypeScript parameter to this type called container that I can pass in at a later time. Think of it as a placeholder, a parameter, a variable we're passing in that can now dynamically shape this object's type and not have to do some crazy union and or ampersand operators all over the place, right? So we can say let number container be a container of type, surprise, number, like that. So we're passing in the number primitive type into this type of t, this generic, and then saying, hey, value should have a value of 5 and not say string 5, which would be an error because that's not how this works, right? But if I copy and paste this code here, and I switch this to string container and switch it to type string, I can now provide the value of, say, hello there, right there, and we have a fantastic way of using a generic with the type alias to pass in a type we're going to be using later on to create very dynamic and readable and maintainable code, right? So just like with generic classes and functions, you can use multiple type variables, add constraints to type variables, provide options, default types, and all that kind of crazy stuff. So like I mentioned, best practices, limitations, and comparisons to interfaces, because I get this question a lot in our Discord channel, which is like, hey, which one should I use for this project? Interfaces, which I see you use a lot, or types, which I might see in online examples a lot. I'll cover that in a third video to keep this one short and keep this series generally short videos and not super long. So watch out for that next TypeScript tips video comparing type aliases to interfaces and the differences, similarities, and use cases, best practices of both. So that's really all for this particular video. Hopefully you feel a bit more comfortable knowing what a type alias is. So this is not types. Types are like primitives and object types and things like that. Type aliases is this usage of the variable that we see here, or the TypeScript variable for representing another type, which could just be a primitive. They're a crucial tool for creating flexible, readable, and maintainable code. That's the theme. And in this video, we unpack what they are, how to use them with different data types, and we highlighted their versatility, right? So if you found this useful, give it a thumbs up, drop a comment, and remember to subscribe for more TypeScript tips. Thanks for tuning in, and here's to some confident and clear coding, y'all.